Hello, and welcome to Horror Movies and Shit. I'm your host, Jim, and with me as always is...
The less talented Mark that's on this podcast.
That is insanely true, sir.
I don't know if that's how you're supposed to show your guest.
So,
It's a straight fact. So.
Yeah, right. We do have a special guest with us today. Joining us today is author extraordinaire Mark Tufo. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on. You have no idea. I was a huge fan of the Zombie Fallout series, though I have not finished it yet. So I was extremely excited when you answered my message on Facebook.
I was just answering to make sure you're going to finish the series, man.
Oh, of course I will. However, I did get sidetracked. I had this apocalyptic phase, and then I've taken about a 2-year break because I got into urban fantasy.
No, I get it.
But
I'm just messing around.
I know, but I will definitely be getting back into this series. But the one that got me thinking about you again, no offense, was The Bleed. I came across that on Audible, and it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
So,
I get asked a lot to do collaborations, and they're tough. They're more difficult than writing a book alone. Believe it or not.
how does that process work? Like, I mean, it's you, Chris Philbrook, and I'm sorry, I forget the third author's name.
David Moody.
Thank you.
Sure.
How did that come about? That whole project.
How did that come about? Well, Chris Philbrook and I have been dancing around doing a collaboration for years, and then we talked about getting a third in there, and who better than pretty much a UK legend, but Dave Moody. So David,
Right.
Sorry, I didn't want to. So I reached out to him, and he was all for it, and actually, David and Chris did a lot of the outlining for those stories. I just kind of came in and penned some parts. I helped a bit, but they definitely were the spearheads to that project.
So, Mark, logistically, how does that work? As far as working with other authors?
See, that's where it's hard, because
right.
For instance, in my case, a couple times they would take some of my characters and do scenes with them, and then I would read it back, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's how that character would act. It's hard if you got any kind of control freak in you, to let go and let somebody else give a voice to your character. And then, but no, they did fantastic with what they did, so then the process, it's hard. Because it wasn't like we're all sitting in a room and writing a scene out together. Ooh, that's good. Like David would write a portion and then hand it off, and Chris would write a portion, and then so then I'd have to like read their stuff and then kind of incorporate it into what I was writing. But not an easy process. I mean, in terms of word count for a book, a lot less words I have to write out, but just a lot more work to putting it all together.
Yeah, it must be very strange for somebody to be writing your characters. I can only imagine it's like he or she wouldn't do that, right? In your head.
Yeah, sometimes even like just a phrase, and you'd be like, "Ooh, they wouldn't be caught dead saying golly gee willikers," So.
Right.
So, I mean, in the first book of the Bleed series, I think it's called Rupture, right? Everything's very segmented because it's before they start exploring the multiverse.
Yeah.
So, was that each one of you took a segment? Like, one of you started with, the lunar colony, and then you had Jenny in London, and then you had Eridon and Thistle on the other planet with the, that they're half gods.
Yeah, I mean,
is that how that worked?
Yeah, the first book was actually probably the easiest because of that. We literally like, this is your third, this is your third, this is your third. So a lot easier to put together that way. Whereas the other ones were intertwined. It was like, okay, I'm going to take it from here, and that kind of thing. So trying to keep it from being, from especially book 2 and 3, not disjointed was a fair amount of work.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. So now my next important question is, if I'm thinking correctly, based on the other stuff that you've written that I've read, Maddie was your character, right?
Yes.
Was one of your characters. That's what I thought, because I loved her to death. She was awesome, and the whole storyline with between her and Sandra. Sandra, oh my god, she was a great villain.
Yeah, I like to. I don't know what it is why I like my villains like I do, but they're fun to write.
And she was a fun character. So Mark, I know you didn't read The Bleed, but the character of Sandra, she essentially was all about self preservation and everybody else be damned.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end, the later parts of the story, she actually does become an agent for the bad guy.
Huh. So, Mark, yeah, for full disclosure, I have not read any of your books. However, today I did pick up the first Zombie Fallout book,
Oh,
and I knew I was going to enjoy it.
uh,
But I think like the third page,
well, that's
and
if you get to the part about the peephole liquor and you're in,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Asshole licking my peephole,
yeah,
and I just that is like some sort of funny poetry right there.
that is
Yeah,
that's the point where it's pretty cool because you're only 3 pages in. If you're okay with that line and you find any humor in it, you're in for the series. If you find that distasteful and you're out, you spent 3 pages. So
Like it's just even funny to say it. That's even what's funny. Like never mind anything else. Just saying it. There's like a rhythm to it. It's just so yeah. So I bought the book, and I have a question about like Kindle and stuff too, right? And publishing through in this new modern age. And I got like the Audible book too, because I generally listen to novels more than I read them because it's just easier on like a commute to work, etc. But like on Kindle, right? So it's $1. So I paid $1 for that. It's like, how does that work as far as getting paid, and like how much does that cut into? How much you get paid? It just seems very strange to me.
well, I'm not gonna. This is in no way, shape, or form giving Amazon any kind of crap, but Amazon's
Right.
huge because Amazon's what they do.
Right. Right.
So on that 99 cents, how much am I seeing? Man, I don't know. I can't imagine it's a dime.
It's crazy. I was reading I don't remember which musician, or it was a rapper or something, was talking about like Spotify and like how many plays it has to get for them to get like a dime. And it's like hundreds and thousands and all this. It's like, to be a creator right now must be very difficult compared to maybe 20 years ago, as far as, revenue and everything else. It's great for the consumer, also, but it's more difficult for the artist.
I mean, it's always been geared towards the quote unquote label. They've always cleaned house while the artists have, for the most part. I'm not sitting there saying I'm eating ramen 7 days a week, but it's definitely, it can be challenging for the artist to make a living. I'm actually, knock on wood, one of the rare ones that just writes. There's a lot of folks that write and then go, sell insurance during the day or
Right.
whatever else their occupation may be.
So I have I've got more generic questions,
That's
and
fine.
Jim will have more specific to your books. But as far as working, I know some authors are very structured. They will work like a 9 to 5 schedule, and they'll work. They'll write all that time, and then it's like a regular job. And then some people do it more in bursts. How do you approach writing?
It's definitely my job. I don't,
Mhm.
it's a job I love. Don't get me wrong, but it is a job. When I,
Do you have do you have like a set schedule? Do you set your alarm and it's 9 o'clock and I'm going to start writing, or is it just when you feel like it?
I don't set my alarm, but I have 2 dogs that have to get up at 7:30 a.m. So there's my alarm. They're like,
Right.
dude, I gotta pee. Get up. So that is my alarm. Then after we hang out for a little bit and get my coffee, I walk into my office and I'm generally working from Oh, 8 to probably 4-ish. You know,
Okay,
whether it's writing, editing, rereading, all that fun stuff, correspondence.
right.
But
So
it's structured.
Okay.
are you? I know when you started, Mark, you were self published, right? Are you still self published? Like you're in charge of all the entire process?
I'm what's considered a hybrid. I have some self-published titles, and I also have titles with publishers. Um, I personally, thankfully, have been able to step away from the business aspect of. There's some authors out there that do the whole enchilada. You know, the marketing, uh,
Right.
the writing, the advertising, and all. I can't even imagine putting that all on my plate. But once started to make some sales and stuff, my wife actually took over all the business side of it. So such a
Oh,
huge
nice.
help. It's unreal.
Yeah.
And you're extremely prolific. I mean, you've written so many books.
Right.
It's out of
That's a,
fear. That's out of fear for sure.
we were having this conversation. I found one list that said you had a total of 63 books in the quote unquote Tufo verse, and one list I saw said 112. Though I didn't get through all of that list.
I don't. 112. 63 is high, I think. 112 seems. I don't know what the heck
Well,
they're talking
so
about.
the zombie Fallout series, it's expanded, right? You have what I think eight, was it number 18 you're on, was the last one I think I saw so far.
20 comes out in May.
Okay, so 20. But then you have spin-offs, like you have Lycan Fallout, you have Vampire Fallout, right?
Uh,
And then
no, like in Fallout, um, has vampires in it, but I don't have
ah,
Vampire Fallout. No,
oh, okay. That was my mistake. I
no
apologize.
worries. No worries. That's no big deal.
um, but then you also have the Indian Hill series, right?
Yes,
And then are they all connected? Like they're all part of the same universe. That all of this stuff is happening within that same.
it's not the same universe. I'll give you a quick overview of the genesis of
Mhm.
this friggin' problem.
Okay.
I started Indian Hill way back in college. Didn't finish it, but I wrote the character Mike Talbot. It just kind of had him
Okay.
laying around. And then when I got laid off, what was it, 2010, 2009? I don't remember. I to For stress, I started writing again, and what I started writing was Zombie Fallout. And I was like, oh, I got
Okay.
this Mike Talbot character. I'll just use him. Because at this point, it was not to sell a book to anyone. I didn't think anyone would want to buy these, much less read them. So now I have 2 book series with this Mike Talbot, but big deal. I'm the only one reading it, you know.
Right.
So then one thing leads to another, and these books start catching. People are like, well, I don't understand. You got this young Mike Talbot in Indian Hill. How does older Talbot in Zombie Fallout not remember fighting the aliens? And I was like, oh crap,
Mm.
I need a backstory.
Mm.
So
Right.
there's a point in the books where there's a car crash, and that is the
Okay.
divergent point for the multiverses. So Indian Hill Mike does not know Zombie Fallout Mike. There's no crossover. They don't know each other. They're
Gotcha.
living different lives.
Well, that makes more sense to me then, because I hadn't gotten into Indian Hill yet. I know of its existence, but I hadn't had a chance to read it yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Feedback has kind of led to that creative process too, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
So, uh, whenever you sit down to write, do you like think of? And I know you've got recurring characters, etc. But do you actually think of just like a general plot, and then fit the characters into that plot, or do you think character first and then plot, or is it just a bit of a mishmash?
It's a little bit of a mix and match. I do kind of like to know what I'll plan out like a scene in my head, and what I want to ultimately achieve at the end of this scene or chapter of book. But I'll let the characters drive the bus, so to speak. I don't care which route they take, just as long as they get to the end. You know. So it's definitely a mix.
Okay.
And how difficult is it to write the comedy aspects?
That's actually surprisingly easy. I, I don't know. I just it just
It's
comes.
it's just, I think that's one of the most difficult thing we talk about, like horror and comedy, and those are like very difficult to write, and sometimes they're even more difficult to put together because they're also subjective. So
Sure,
I was just wondering,
I'm a
yeah,
sixth grader at heart, so yeah,
Well, I
aren't we?
mean, I think from the books of yours that I've read, it's not so much about the comedy. It's you use it as a vehicle to break tension and sort of shift focus. So maybe it just comes more naturally to you in that aspect in that respect.
yeah. I remember when I first started Zombie Fallout, I was actually going to write a straight comedy. I was going to actually call it Zombie
Oh,
Follies, and then
oh,
people started dying. I'm like, well, that's not that funny. So maybe it's not going to be quite a straight comedy. But yeah, people definitely do appreciate a tense scene. They get to relax a couple pages later when something funny happens.
right.
So for my limited, again, I've only read a couple of chapters, but I find your writing style very readable, if that makes any sense. It's very easy to follow along with the characters and kind of have fun with them too. There's some books that I like. You could look at maybe like Dune or something like that. Fantastic book, but I wouldn't say it's very readable. You have to like work with it. From what I've read of yours, it's just like you're along with it with the ride. So um,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
you're talking to a guy that was in what the heck is it? English. I had to freaking take English a couple times in high school. Remedial. There we go. I can't even remember the friggin' word. I my grasp on the English language is not super high. So and I just write how I generally act.
Right.
And I actually read uh, a review of your book that talked a lot about how it seemed very natural, and it talked about. I read an interview that you did where you mentioned that you write a lot about what you know, so like a lot of the relationships are sort of natural, like, and I was going to ask you this anyway, like with respect to Michael Talbot, I know a lot of him is based on you because you served in the military, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that, by
Thank
the
you.
way.
Appreciate
Um, then you have Tracy, Nicole, Justin, Travis. So I'm assuming that these are all based on relationships in your real life, like your wife and your kids.
it. Yeah.
My big question is Henry the dog.
Oh,
How much of that is based on one of your dogs?
Henry was a glorious beast. He unfortunately left us a couple years back, but
uh,
magnificent animal. Good dog.
yeah, and funny in the book. He brings he does bring a lot of comic relief. I laughed way too much at that dog.
Yeah, there's yeah, I'm sure I won't say anything because of Mark, but there's a dog in book one that I can't really say anything without giving it away. So
Uh,
I'll just leave it alone.
I know, I know.
he's
So
the English bulldog. Is that
Yeah, Henry. Yeah.
what?
yeah, he's a fun dog. That's for
I,
sure.
I would say number one. You can pick out a psycho, right? If they have a dog and they don't say hello whenever you come into the house and goodbye whenever you leave, they're probably a psycho.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I tend to agree with you there.
Yeah. Hmm.
I would too. So I do have a question, and I know Mark is just starting the book, but I do want to ask about Tommy
Okay.
because I think he's probably got one of the most interesting story arcs between all the books that I've read so far.
Sure.
And I'm just curious, what was your thought process with developing that character?
I was taught he was never supposed to make it off the Walmart roof. He was going to die right there and then. To be honest with
Wow.
you,
Right.
so he was kind of a slow burn because I never really had any intention of bringing that character along for the ride.
Right.
So I don't know how in depth you want me to go because else. Spoilers.
Yeah,
For,
I'm trying not to spoil anything for
It,
Mark.
it's okay. You can talk ahead.
So I mean, he does go through a lot of changes in the book series, right?
yes.
So I'm just curious what, like, I did read an article where you addressed one of the faux pas about, a memory somebody had of him when he was young, but I'm just curious, how did you, I mean, like, that progression from him becoming the good guy, hearing the voice of Ryan Seacrest, the compassionate, you know gentle giant almost. How did that arc to what he becomes later develop?
Well, that's a character over what 20 books and 12 years. Just driving his own bus. If he found a different route. Trying to
He
be
does, and he's a
trying to be vague. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. I completely understand. I do have another question about Eliza.
Sure.
I need to know. So there's a kiss scene in this book that was absolutely disgusting, and I need to know how that happened, because it is so graphic and so, like, I physically retched when I read that scene in the
Oh,
book.
I can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah,
Um, how did I write it? Is that what you're?
like, I mean, how did that scene come about? Like, what was your inspiration for that scene? What led you to that meetup between those two characters?
I figured it would be a pretty tense confrontation, and then meeting her face to face, and then Mike having such an aversion to germs, and her being aware of it. I knew it was just gonna screw him up, and I was like,
Right.
"Well, this will be fun." So that
Yeah,
was
and it was definitely fun. That's for sure. So, you have another character too, Durgan, that we see in a lot of the book, in a lot of the first few books. What was your inspiration for that character? Because he's pretty much a bad guy from the get go, right?
yeah.
He's not
No.
he's not a nice character to deal with.
Uh, you know, I'm sure there's not too many of us that are walking around the planet that haven't dealt with our fair share of a-holes. He's just
Right.
an amalgamation of many of them that I've come across in life.
Yeah.
I do a podcast with one.
You're such a nice guy, Mark.
Only kidding, Jim.
No, you're not. It's
No,
not that untrue. So, Mark, you have another question?
yeah, I because I love movies, and I always think if I'm writing something, who do I want? If it's made into a movie, to be like the main stars in it, and who would I want to direct it?
That's actually a great segue, though, Mark, because um, Mark T on one of your Facebook pages, I saw a post that was very interesting that I was going to ask about from December of last year.
Sure.
How's that working out?
I guess it's a wait and see because I haven't heard anything since I signed the paperwork. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Is there a movie in the works? Is that
It's in a developmental stage. Audible created Audible Studios, and they've taken their goal is to take original audiobooks and create stuff for platforms like streaming platforms, whether Amazon or Apple TV or Hulu or whatever.
Do you know what's funny? Because I'm like, I haven't read any of his books. I have to do some research. So on IMDb, it said that back in September of 2012, Zombie Fallout was in pre-production.
That's about how long it takes.
Yeah.
But do you have an ideal cast? Say we'll just do the Zombie Fallout. Do you have an ideal cast or director, or would you like multiple movies or a series? What would you like to see?
I think I'd prefer a series because I don't know who gets multi deals anymore except Marvel, which I love. I'm definitely not giving them a hard time.
Yep.
So I'd like a series because I think you could flesh things out more. You would. I don't know how you would cram this series into one movie. I don't think it would work. When I first was presented with this question, you remember the show Eureka, the sheriff Colin Ferguson?
I love that show.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that would be a perfect Mike.
That's fair.
And BT, unfortunately, the actor has since passed, but I've always kind of had MCD in my head when I thought about BT. Michael Clark
Yeah.
Duncan. So,
Oh, yeah. He was such a great actor.
I
He
agree.
was.
Just
I mean, such a physical presence too.
yeah, without a doubt,
agreed.
without a doubt.
I absolutely do agree.
But director wise, no, I'd just be floored that it was actually on the screen.
So, like a John Carpenter back in his heyday, or somebody like that.
Oh, I wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So we talked a little bit about Indian Hill, and you mentioned that it was an alien type book, and then we have the Zombie Fallout, which clearly is more horror based. What's your favorite genre to write?
Probably historical romance is one of my favorites.
Okay, I mean that's fair, I guess.
No, I really dig writing in the paranormal. Is one of my favorite genres to kind of tap into.
Okay, that's fair.
But I am writing a fantasy book, so that's fun. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That's
Jim will love that.
chance.
I do love some urban fantasy. Not gonna lie, I do. It's the paranormal romance I can't handle. That's a bit much for me.
Well, at least it's yep.
Go ahead.
At least it's not
Go ahead.
dinosaur porn.
I mean, that could be interesting, I guess, depending on what you're really into.
That's real. Just so we're on the same page, that is real. You can go find that on Amazon. I think it's hilarious.
But I don't have to, right?
Please.
Like I could, but I don't have to,
No.
right?
Yeah, no, you have to, Jim.
It's just funny to see that an actual book. I'm in love with the freaking Velociraptor. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my god. So, sorry, but back to the books. Now that we're talking about dinosaur porn. So a lot of your characters are based on your personal relationships, like with your wife and your kids. So how do they feel when they read some of these storylines, as far as what the characters that are based on them get to experience?
Yeah. If I had a do-over, I wouldn't have done it. And I would go back to the beginning of the interview. I didn't really think anyone was going to read them. So what did it matter who I used?
True.
I wish back when I started I didn't use those names. But
Okay.
I know the missus at first was not a happy camper about it, but and now it is what it is now,
Mm-hmm.
Now, didn't your wife encourage you to publish your first book? Right?
Yeah.
According to the internet.
Maybe she thought like I did too that nobody was going to buy them, so what's the big deal? I don't know,
Wait till the movies come out.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, that's my
Sorry, I'm
dog.
looking. Oh, that's okay. We all have dogs, so it's
Yep.
okay.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm looking at. Hang on a second. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just looking at my notes.
It's all right.
So with the zombie fallout, I wonder because it seems like that starts with like a pandemic, right? Vaccines,
Yes.
etc.
Swine flu.
Right. Which it's funny whenever you read something in the past that's talking about something like that after COVID, and you're like, wow, yeah, I can see how that could happen. Do you find that with the likes of The Last of Us, there's maybe a cycle coming back with kind of post-apocalyptic, especially virus-related things? Have you seen any uptick in your sales or interest? Just because that's kind of...
I don't. I know The Walking Dead was huge with the zombies because once the zombies, everybody was like had to buy just consuming zombie stuff, so that was a huge uptick. The problem now is disposable income is not huge. With the prices at the grocery store, at the pump. I mean, just everything is more expensive. So folks, well, do I eat tonight or do I buy a book? So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually, it's hitting harder in terms of sales as opposed to lifting up. I don't think that has anything to do with Last of Us. I just think it's the state of things at the moment.
Well, I mean, the simple answer to that is you buy a book, you read it, then you eat it,
Well,
and then
maybe I should start making them on rice paper so you can boil it.
There you go.
wow, I'm going to
That's a
copyright
genius. I was going to say that's a genius idea. That could. That's
eatable
brilliant.
readables.
That's
That's
soy-based
right.
ink, so you're also
that could be.
Oh,
I think we have a million
that,
dollar idea here.
that book was spicy. Uh, Jim, do you have any more of your own internal questions that you want to ask
I mean,
Mark?
I did have some more character driven stuff, but I don't want to ruin the book series for you.
Oh, don't worry about me.
So I do. I am curious though. What was your driving force for Eliza? Like what to you motivates her the most?
it's funny. I haven't thought about her in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
She was actually not supposed to exist either. So neither of those people, Tommy or Eliza, it was actually my brother came up with the idea about it for her, and I kind of ran with it.
Yeah.
Her motivation, I guess, as opposed to mine, hers has always been anger. That's
Right.
her driving force. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think I'd need more time to dwell on it. I haven't actually thought about her for a good long many years.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I know she focuses pretty heavily in the first several books, but I know she's not. She doesn't. Well, I don't want to ruin it, Mark, but she focuses. She's a very prominent character in several of the books. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
But she was definitely a fun character because you got to like you could tell she was motivated by something. She wasn't just a mindless killing machine.
No.
And that's the part I like the most about that character.
Yeah, it's I've found that villains are fun characters to write. I don't know if either of you have or should ever read my Tim series, but that was a chance for me to dive deeper into villain territory.
I just discovered your Tim series today when I was doing research for this episode, and I thought I need to look at that.
If you started reading it, you would have decided not to have me on.
So
it sounds like something I want to read. I like the darker stuff than Jim.
He does.
It's definitely
he definitely
that.
does.
It's definitely that.
So I have a question about audiobooks because I consume most of my books via audiobook. And I love the narrator for the Fallout series. Sean Runnette is one of my favorite audiobook narrators ever. Do you get much say in the people that narrate your books?
So way back in the day, I had company Tantor, great people, great company. They reached out and they wanted the audio rights to Zombie Fallout. And
right.
Back then, I was like, audiobooks? Who listens to audiobooks? Nobody, all I could think of was my mom in the kitchen with the cassettes on the crappy tape recorder machine. And I was like, whatever, man. Give me the money. You can have the audio rights. Then a few weeks later, they reach back out and they're like, oh, we found a narrator we think you'll like, this guy Sean Runnette. And I was like, I don't care. I really couldn't give a crap one way or the other. And come to find out, Sean Runnette's just amazing. And, he blew the series up for me, So,
Yeah.
With I attribute as much as my success to my writing as to more so even probably Sean Runnette's narrating.
Yeah, I absolutely.
The narrator can really make or break a story.
I agree.
It does
100%.
And it's if you don't believe the narrator's voice, especially when they're doing a character, it really does detract from whether the story's good or not. It doesn't matter because if I'm listening to somebody that I just can't handle their voice, I'm not going to listen to the whole thing.
But and I don't understand how this happens. Like I've listened to audiobooks where the narrator mispronounced mispronounces words. Like, I don't even understand that. Do you not have an editor or somebody that's listening to you that's like, that's not how you pronounce that word?
You know, it's hard.
Uh,
You know, I know that like the first book or two that Sean had done, I listened to the whole way back. But that was I haven't listened all the way through since then. You know, so I mean, he's a professional, so I leave it to him. You know,
I,
so
I,
Yeah.
I will tell you this: like one of my favorite authors is an English author, Graham Masterton, and I was listening to one of his audiobooks, and the narrator says, "This is a book by Graham Masterson." I'm like, you can't even get the author's name right. This is
yeah, that's not off to a good start.
And I actually listened to an audiobook. It was like 75 hours because it was a giant omnibus of the entire series of this urban
Wow.
fantasy book I listened to. And they changed narrators because unfortunately the previous narrator passed away
Oh,
before the last book was finished. And the new narrator was good, but they said words differently and it annoyed the crap out of me.
that's
I just,
I did a short story, I guess a novella, in Nicholas Sandberry Smith's Extinction Cycles. And I brought some of my characters over and did it for them, and they had a completely different narrator do my characters, and people just hated it because it just
no, no, I need those details because I love that universe.
the Nicholas Sandberry Smith, good guy, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Uh,
I absolutely I loved Extinction Cycle. That was the first series of his that I read, and then um, I got into Orbs because Bronson Pinchot was another great audiobook narrator.
yeah, he's the one I'm talking about. So I didn't want his name.
Oh well.
Well, there it is.
You heard it here first,
I'm,
folks.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
right.
he's super talented. He with my characters, people were didn't like the way he had portrayed them. You know, they
I-
obviously they've been listening to my guys for 15 books at that time. And
right.
this, Bronson comes in and does it his own way.
And,
So which characters are we talking about here? What characters cross over?
Oh man, I'm not even 100% sure. That was like 5 or 6 years ago too. I think Mike is in there.
I'm gonna have to look this up.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same as if you watch like a TV series and you have somebody playing a character, and then you watch that series for like 6 or 7 seasons, and then they change the actor, right? Sometimes the new actor can be great, but it's just different,
Yeah.
and you're used to what you're used to, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
it sounds so easy being a narrator. It's in your head. All you gotta do is read a book. So after being banned from YouTube for a couple years, I finally got my channel back. Go figure.
Oh.
And so, just as a little thing, I read a few pages of my books, and God, I try to act them out, and it's horrible. Like I sound like crap, but it's fun, and I laugh while I'm doing them, so it's all good.
Well, it's like, you think about an actor, right? So an actor is in a TV show or a movie, and they're playing usually one character, perhaps two. But when you're a narrator, you have to play all the characters.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. That I got a whole, not that I didn't already appreciate what they do, but that was a whole new level for me. Go, wow.
Well, yeah, because you have to keep inflection straight, you have to keep voice straight, you have to keep cadence straight. I couldn't do it.
Look, I don't even like,
And
when you're going from the character's voice to, the narration part and then back to the character's voice. I don't, how do you even do it? Just boggles my mind.
I can barely do like a Zoom call in work. Never mind the way of like other people.
so, Mark, remember, keep in mind, you're speaking to a gentleman who's never heard an episode of his own podcast.
Right. I hate the sound of my voice.
That's funny.
It's weird because I'm not from the US, right? So my accent is like not what it used to be. So it's like a weird transatlantic mishmash of Northern Ireland and Florida.
Well, and it's kind of the same reason why I don't listen to my audiobooks. I just because I'm like, ooh, that scene didn't kind of come away across the way I meant it to, or I should have done this, or why did I do that? So I avoid it that way. I don't have to think about it what I could have done or not.
So how does that work? Because I always feel like very self-critical if I try to do anything creative. Like whenever you're writing something, do you look back and do you like? Obviously, you don't because you were very prolific. But like, whenever I write something, I look at it. I'm like, it's a sentence, but I'll spend like 15 minutes being like, this is terrible. So I could never get anything done.
I find that the most important thing for me to do is get it down on paper, because for computer screen paper, but because once it's down, you can manipulate it. At least you've got the core, the nugget of the idea you're trying to get across. It's down, and you can beef it up, clean it up, make it clearer, embellish whatever you need to do. And then, thankfully, I've got a wonderful editor that can fix all my crap, so it helps.
Do you ever suffer from writer's block?
Nope. No.
Does the beer help with that?
Jim, do you?
I don't write, so no. I don't suffer from it at all. I tried to write in junior high, and I realized I was just regurgitating every horror movie I'd ever seen.
I've come to the determination that writer's block is, to me, I'm not trying to cast a wide net. I think it's just a lack of focus. It's distractions. So what I do is I crank music in the morning, and that kind of floods out all the other thoughts, all the other noises, and I can focus on what I want to write and to do.
We have to know what sort of music you listen to, then.
I'm more into the driving rock type of genre, but I like a lot of different genres of music, except for jazz. I just can't stand jazz. I can't.
Jazz, yeah, I'm exactly the same. I listen to a lot of different stuff, but jazz, it's too all over the place. It's just like,
I don't know. To me, it's like four people that are playing completely different songs, and they're just standing in the same place. That's all.
Yeah.
Jim, do you want to talk about your yacht rock obsession?
We don't need to talk about my yacht rock obsession. I do when I'm at work, I prefer to listen to quote unquote yacht rock, and I think we're all roughly an age where we know what yacht rock is, and we know what bands we're talking about. So it puts me in a good mood. It's nice and mellow and it's chill when I'm at work.
No, I have no problem with soft rock.
Yeah. And then when I'm angry or I need to get shit done, I put on stuff like Five Finger Death Punch.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Jim. Get some Dimmu Borgir or some
who?
Some Norwegian death, like black metal. Dimmu Borgir. Like orchestral black metal. Great.
Yeah. I'm not really into that. Although I do really like one Christian rock band. Skillet has some good music.
My son likes Skillet.
I was surprised. I didn't realize that they were so heavily influenced by religion. But I like their music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the music's good, the music's good. No
exactly. That's how I feel too. I don't pick too much stuff apart.
So Mark, I have a question that's not book related.
Okay.
So you're from Boston, right?
Yes.
And you're now living in Maine, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you like the cold weather?
Love it.
I was going to say clearly he does, because in between there was Colorado, right?
Yeah. What I find with the cold weather is it keeps people away. So.
Oh.
Yeah. I think I'm onto something.
We're both here in Florida, so.
Oh, sorry.
I'm originally from Connecticut, and I have family in Maine. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, but you don't live there, Jim.
No. I just used to visit there on the summers.
Oh, okay.
With my grandparents.
All right.
Cool.
So now, Mark, we're going to do a get to know you segment, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you some questions, and you just tell us. You just answer honestly.
Oh shit!
Give me a horror movie you hate.
Oh, I'm gonna be honest. I don't watch horror flicks. Isn't that friggin' good?
Oh no!
I know. I'm sorry. I don't.
Jim's question's gone.
I don't.
Yeah, that's every question is now gone. We're done.
The anxiety they produce in me, I don't enjoy the feeling, so I don't generally watch them.
Well, that's fair. I mean, you do write horror fiction, so I mean, I can understand that, I guess.
And
Yeah, I mean,
the thing about my horror is I know what's going to happen. You know,
Right, exactly. There's no suspense involved,
right?
and that's fair.
see, I love horror. If I want to be scared, I'll watch the news or documentaries or read history
That's a
or read
Yeah.
like horror movies to me. Like
Well,
whenever I was 10, I might have been scared by one, but
that is not true, Mark. You just told me about a movie you watched that turned your stomach.
right, right. But that's a specific fear. So, Mark, I do not like heights. So there's a movie that's out recently called Fall
Oh,
about two girls that climb this like 2,000-foot radio tower, and yeah, it just sets my like height phobia.
I can tell you the movie that scared me the most when I was a kid was Nightmare on Elm Street. That one
See?
freaked me out. I didn't hate it, but it freaked me out. And then I can tell you one I really enjoyed. My son made me watch was Descent. With the women
Yep.
See?
went down
Great
in that
flick.
cave. That was friggin' great flick. But, still.
It was, but Mark has an issue with the U.S. version. He doesn't like the ending.
Oh,
Right, right. So, well, yeah, yeah. The U.S. version where she gets out and she's in her car and everything's fine. The original version, she thinks she's out of the cave, but then it cuts to her. She's still in the cave and she's like done for.
didn't they do an extended ending that showed it like that, or something?
They did.
She,
Yeah,
That,
when it was released on
original.
DVD.
That was the original ending, yeah.
yeah, she imagined that she got out. There was
Yep.
a movie like that too. I can't remember. I read the book first, but this group of American idiot hikers were down like in the Mayan area, and they came across this cursed hill, and the local
Yes, yeah.
yeah
It's the plant one. It's the ruin.
yeah. The movie was different, the ending, than it was in the book. The book was a lot,
I hated the movie.
definitely different.
Yeah, it definitely was. But that movie was just when the plants started mimicking a ringing cell phone. I just lost all interest in that movie.
Well, I mean, you have to suspend your disbelief at some points.
Well, Mark, as you well know, I have an issue with that.
Well, you don't like it when somebody's hair is dyed strangely.
I do. There are certain things, Mark, that will set me off about a movie that probably would not set most people off.
I've definitely got my critics too.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
We'll wait.
If y'all want a bathroom break,
We're not going to do anything.
Well, actually, while he's gone, we can actually talk a little bit about the stuff we didn't want to spoil. I know, right? So, I mean, given that you've written so like you said, book 20 is coming out in May, was it?
Yes.
So, how do you keep the story fresh for you, given that this series has been going on for a while now, right?
Yeah, I've said it before. If it's no longer fun to write, I won't write it. But it is still fun, and that was kind of there was a shift from Mike and his family to now it's more of a military approach is happening. So it's fresh because it's new to me too. We got a new cast of characters for the most part, interspersing the old ones in there, and then I can kill off people without feeling bad about it because they're not related to me.
Well, that's true. It opens up a whole new world.
Right.
I did once when I was a child write a story because I used to like to think that I was eventually going to be an author where I killed off my sister and she found it and did she beat the crap out of me.
Oh Jesus! So Mark, I'm sorry, I'm just back here. So we pretend this is some sort of like horror movie or horror-centric podcast, but it's really Jim's psycho eval podcast.
Yeah, Mark likes to figure out what is wrong with me. He hasn't figured it out yet, though.
That's all right because this is my therapy session, so we're good.
Exactly. That's what we call it. This is my weekly therapy session as we delve into this stuff.
But I don't get paid for this, Jim.
No, nobody said you should. Your advice is shit, so why would I pay for
I don't
it?
know. Anyway, um, Jim, do you have any more questions?
I don't. We talked a little bit while you were gone.
Okay.
At the moment, I don't. But I like the way the conversation's just sort of evolving naturally.
Um, so usually what we do, and Mark, we don't want to keep you longer than you need to be here. We usually do like a what we've watched section at the end. So just anything that you've watched in the last week or two,
And it does not have to be horror related.
or read, or yeah, just anything you want to talk
Well,
about.
actually,
Game,
I've been watching
whatever.
The Last of Us.
Hmm.
Yep.
I'm enjoying the hell out of that.
Yep.
Have you played the game? Or do you
No,
play games?
I'm not. I'm not coordinated gaming enough. Like I can. I used to play sports all the time, and I love it. But like gaming coordination is a whole other thing, and I just don't have it.
Yeah.
My son will be trying to teach me how to work the Xbox controller, while he's hacking me with a sword, and oh, you dead again, Dad? And you're like, oh, come on, man. No, so I haven't.
That's fair.
But it's The Last of Us. Then someone turned me on. My daughter-in-law, Shrinking. It's on Apple TV.
Yep.
I was like halfway into the first episode, and I'm like, I don't know. Now I'm like on the fourth episode. I'm like, this is great. So I've been
Yeah.
watching that. And what the heck else? I got watching something on Netflix, Lockwood or something. Lockwood and Company.
Lockwood and Company. That's the English.
The ghosts.
English
The ghosts
with the teenager. Yeah, the kids can see ghosts, but nobody else can.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's pretty good. I saw most of that one already.
So that's kind of what going around in my carousel right now.
Mark?
So what do you think of The Last of Us?
I like it. It's pretty good. I'm a big Pedro Pascal fan.
Yep.
I'm not sure how I feel about Bella. I mean, she was so awesome in Game of Thrones. I mean, just
Yeah.
this unique character. But I don't know if this is the way they mean for her to act in this show. I don't know. It doesn't come off like she's acting at her best, but I really don't know if that's the director telling it to do it that way. I mean, I just can't see her being a bad actress after what she did on Game of Thrones, so I'm not entirely sure what the hell's going on there.
Yeah, and back in the day, and I think a lot of people talked about Ellen Page, now Elliot Page. The video game character is very similar to her looking, or him now looking. I think, as far as her character in the show, I thought they made her very kind of unlikable for a lot of the episodes, and I think they've changed that more recently, where she's more likable. But yeah, Pedro Pascal is great in everything I've seen him in.
Yep.
And it's funny that we've got two Game of Thrones characters
Yeah,
having full adventure, right?
just her facial expressions don't match what she's saying a lot of times, and there'll be some serious dialogue, and to me it looks like she's smirking or something. Like I don't. It kind of throws me off a bit, but for the most part, I enjoy the show. So
Yep.
minor
I agree.
dig.
Mark,
Jim?
what do you got?
I've watched a few things. I watched a 2022 movie called Nocebo,
Not heard of that one.
which is, you might think it's a foreign movie, but it's actually not. It's a movie about a fashion designer played by Eva Green.
Oh, I like
Right.
Eva Green.
Yeah, I like Eva Green too. And her husband's Mark Strong, and I like him too. He's a good actor. And basically, at the start, she's doing like this fashion show, but she has to go to the back, and there's nobody there. But she sees this dog, and it's like a mangy dog with it looks like it's blind, and it's got ticks all over it. And the dog shakes, and all the ticks fly off, and one of them attaches to the back of her neck.
Oh,
At that
Growing up in the woods, I know that that's not an uncommon occurrence.
Oh, yeah, ticks are ticks are so nasty. Like, I'm the sort of person that I have a pool. Like, if bugs fall in there, I rescue them. But like ticks and mosquitoes, I can't do them. Like, especially ticks. My dogs have been ticks in the pack. It's just gross.
Yeah.
So she's got this tick on her back, and then it skips forward a certain amount of time, and it's almost like Lyme disease she has. She's very sick, and then this woman turns up at her door. This woman from the Philippines, and she's like, "Oh, hi," and she says her name. Like, I'm here to help. And she's like, well, I've been having memory issues, so maybe she's here to help around the house. So she comes in, and it's one of these kind of interloper things. You know that there's something going on, kind of supernatural, with this like housemaid, and it was actually pretty good. It was fairly predictable, but it said some interesting things about like sweatshops, and she's a fashion designer. Somebody from the Philippines coming in is manufacturing there, so you can see kind of the motive. That's not a big spoiler because it's fairly obvious. It was well acted, well directed. It was pretty good.
Okay.
Nacebo. I don't know what Nacebo means. I don't think they even mention it in the movie, so it's probably a Philippine word about something. I don't know. Sticking with kind of like the foreign influence, but it's a U.S. movie or a Western movie. I watched the 2022 Sandra Oh movie Uma.
What did you think? I've seen it.
So I thought this was pretty average. This was very. It's weird that I watched like some of these kind of like supernatural type things with the same thematic elements. It was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't fantastic. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but I thought it was pretty good.
Again, whenever you look at some of these movies, it's like the story points are pretty obvious, and you can tell what they're doing, and it's kind of by the numbers, but it's well made and it's decently acted, so you can't be like, oh, well, this is terrible,
Right?
but it's just nothing memorable.
Well, that's
Right, and
the thing with so many places out there, streaming services. There's so much content, and there's so much pressure to put stuff out that a lot of it is predictable and boilerplate, and you kind of know what's going to happen, but it fills a slot.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that something that's predictable is necessarily average, because maybe the way that they pull it off is something more interesting than the kind of the general plot. But those two ones were just kind of like, they're all right. They're all right. I don't regret spending an hour and a half with them.
So, Mark, I have a little bit of news for you.
Uh-oh.
The nocebo effect is said to occur when negative expectations of the patient regarding a treatment cause the treatment to have more negative effects than it otherwise would have. That is what nocebo means.
Oh, there I was thinking it was a Philippine word.
You did, but that's okay.
I'm obviously not very erudite. The next one I watched, I hadn't seen before, but it's Dario Argento's first movie, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
I'm 0 for 3 here.
Right?
You'll probably be 0 for 4 in a second.
More than likely, he does have very interesting picks most of the time.
So most people know Dario Argento for like Suspiria, those types of movies. So this was really, and I guess this was a movie that really put giallo movies on that. Jim, do you want to tell Mark what a giallo movie is?
It means yellow.
Okay.
So it's essentially like a grimy film, like something that would have taken place. What?
Not necessarily. Well, probably, but go ahead.
In my experience, it is. But it's essentially a movie that Mark's going to force me to watch that I'm going to hate.
So, Mark, have you heard the term giallo? You might have heard that.
Everything you said was cut out.
He was wondering. He was wondering if you had heard of the term giallo
No.
when it comes to film.
No.
So giallo is like a subgenre from Italy. Basically, there are like murder mysteries, usually with a black gloved killer, and usually having elaborate deaths. And the word giallo means yellow, which comes from like the novels that they were kind of based on, and the novels were like pulpy, like mass media, kind of lurid stuff that the average person in Italy would be able to afford, and they're titillating, and the pages would be yellow because they're like cheaper material. So there's a whole genre of movies in Italy called giallo, which has got this murder mystery aspect to it. This one, this one was an interesting movie. The start and the end were great, but it was filled with weird, silly stuff in the middle. You could really tell like a template for something better to come after it. So I thought Argento Giallo, first one, it's got more historical kind of importance than being that good.
Okay.
So I gave it, if I'd rate it, probably a 6.5 out of 10.
I've never heard you give anything less than a 6.
Oh, what? Shut
That's
your
probably
mouth.
your median score, sir.
You've never heard me give anything less than a 6.
No.
That's bullshit. I will stick him in a rank. Skin him a rink.
Oh well, yeah. We didn't actually grade that one.
No, there's some movies I hate, but I mean, for most creative things, I usually give them a little, there's effort there if it's not like totally embarrassingly bad. The last thing that I watched was a 2020 movie called Anything for Jackson.
Okay. Wait, well, I've heard of this one.
Yeah, this is a movie about like an aging couple. They're probably in their 60s, who kidnap a pregnant woman, and they've recently joined like a satanic cult.
Oh.
And what they kind of want to do is like a reverse exorcism, where their grandson Jackson, who had died, they kind of want to put his soul into the baby of this pregnant woman.
I did see this movie. Okay.
I thought this was the most interesting of the movies I watched this week.
Yeah.
I thought the actors were really good. It had a weird kind of feeling about it. They had some interesting paranormal stuff going on. Yeah, and as far as movies, and obviously The Last of Us, I watched. That's all I watched. I've kind of got back into gaming a little bit. I was I was playing. This is gonna sound terrible. I was playing Hot Wheels.
Oh, okay.
Just going back into your childhood.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good racing game, but it's got like the orange tracks and like the loop de loops and stuff.
oh, cool.
It was pretty fun. On Oculus VR, I've got into Pistol Whip, which is a cool kind of shooting game.
Yep.
And oddly enough, I've never played golf, but I just bought Golf Plus, and it's fun. Like VR just makes things that you normally wouldn't do more interesting.
Yeah.
So
if you say so.
Well, have you tried VR, Jim?
I have not, because I have an eye condition, so
your
VR makes me sick.
Shut your whore mouth.
So my list is considerably shorter than yours. I did watch a documentary on Shudder called Memory, which is essentially the story of Alien and how it was conceived and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was really interesting to see all the places that Ridley Scott ripped the story off from.
So did that talk about the green slime?
Yep.
Did it? Wow, that's super interesting. I watched all the documentaries on the alien quadrology,
Yeah.
box. So like I started that documentary, but I'm like, I don't know if I'll get anything different from what I already know.
There's a lot in there that was interesting, and it may be because I don't know as much about the films as you do, but
So here's a fun fact. Have you heard of the Japanese movie Battle Royale?
I have not.
So a lot of people are like, the Hunger Games is kind of ripping off Battle Royale. So
Right.
Battle Royale is a movie about a bunch of Japanese school kids, like high school kids,
Right.
and this is like a government program where every year a certain class is just taken to this island, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all given like a random weapon.
Okay.
And there's only one person that can get off the island, right? So they all have to kill each other,
Oh.
down to one person, right? Kind of
Okay.
like the Hunger Games. So that came out like, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s. But the
Okay.
director of that also directed The Green Slime from like 1968 or whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, the I don't have any other things that I've watched other than The Last of Us, which we've already talked about. I'm all caught up on that. But I do have two audiobooks that I listen to. I started a book called Ink and Sigil, which is an urban fantasy. Mark, I know they're your favorite. It takes place in the universe of another series that I like. It's by an author named Kevin Hearn. And then I did this little book that I don't know if any of you guys have heard of. It's called Zombie Fallout Zero. It's sort of
That,
a prequel story.
never
And
heard.
No, me
that
neither.
was really
Who wrote that?
I know, right? That was really interesting though because I honestly I I really like the whole story. But I do have a question for you about that. The senator in the book in Fallout Zero. I don't know if it's the way that Sean was pronouncing his name, but was his name Deneau?
Yes.
Oh my god, that pissed me off to no end. You have no idea, but it made sense for the story. And that's as much as I'll say about that, Mark.
All
But
right.
it was a really good prequel. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Your content is awesome. I absolutely love listening to your stories, and I promise I will get into the other stuff
No, there's no
after I
quiz.
finish Fallout.
There's no quiz. I promise.
And that's fair. I appreciate that. Mark, you have anything else?
No, Mark, we just really appreciate you coming on. It's been so interesting hearing about your writing process, about some of your stories, and I'm looking forward to jumping into the Zombie Fallout series.
Well, thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, and I really like getting to talk to the people that create the stuff that I enjoy.
Awesome.
Yep, people that are much more creative and skilled than us, right, Jim?
Yeah, exactly. The people that I aspire to be someday.
Let
when
me
I
know
grow
when you
up.
get them on your show.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. But thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And to everybody else, thanks for listening.
All right, Jim.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.